Guys, welcome back to my sewing room. I'm Kelly and you found me here on Pick and Stitches, and today we're going to be sewing out block number 3 of our Pieceful Baskets. We've got block number 1 that came, that's out of order. The block number 1 and then block number 2 came out last month, and so now we've got the third one. I've got everything cut out and ready to go. If you've been following along with me, I'm mostly sewing this out in the same way that the Fat Quarter Shop has colored it on the pattern itself. So the only difference is this month I actually do not have enough of the white dot. I just ordered a half-yard bundle of the entire collection. I didn't order the Pieceful Baskets quilt box. So I'm going to sew this out with my Bella Solids. We're going to see how it turns out. If it doesn't match well, I can always restitch it with the white on white dot if I repurchase that, or I can just pull the borders off of those and remake them. We'll see. At the end, I'll let you guys vote on whether or not I need to make changes or if I can just incorporate it as is. So this is a pattern that comes out every month in the Sew Sampler. You can also purchase this pattern separately if you would like, and I'll put the link in the description below. And I can't wait. Let's jump right on in. Okay, so I have everything cut out and ready to go. Oops, I'm losing all my letters. Just like I normally would, I'm going to do the triangles on a roll for our O&M pieces, and we're going to just start with those. So the first thing we'll do is turn our machine on and drop that stitch length down because I want it super short. And then I'm just going to sew along these diagonal lines. So I looked into it, and this machine sews 1,500 stitches per minute, and the one Kimberly just got sews 5,000. I think we may need an upgrade. And since this is so short, I will leave it in real time for you guys. All right, we'll head over to the pressing station and press and cut these apart, and then we'll have our half square triangles ready to go. Okay, so first we're going to cut around all 4 edges of our half square triangles here. And while I've got the ruler in this orientation, I'm just going to go straight down the line. Now these lines are important because they're going to set up the outside of our triangles. So you want to make sure that you're as accurate as you can be. And then we'll rotate those. I'm going to just cut those individually because that is my outside line. A lot of times I try to do those longest lines first. But as you know, there's always more than one way to do it in quilting, right? Okay, so now this next line is not going to be as important because we've already sewn here and we've already sewn that. So we're easy peasy, somewhere close. I really do like these little projects we've been doing every month. It's a lot different than doing 500 all at once of the same block over and over and over again, which I had done quite a bit of kind of third quarter last year, fourth quarter last year. So this variety this year has been fun. Okay, so there we'll have it. We'll go press those one direction. So I'll set my seams. And there's the tiniest bit of paper still on here. That's no big deal because I'm going to cut that off. Okay. Alright, so after I've pressed all these open and let them sit for just a second, I'll throw a quick clapper on them. Then we'll get our scissors and just snip the corners off. Ah, one corner. I want to snip both corners off. There we go. So, what do you guys think? Should I press these open or leave them pressed to one side? Kind of had a mixed bag. I think it's the Piece and Quilt Sampler. Some of those blocks kind of got me when I didn't press them open. They needed it. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just press these open because it's only a couple. And this pattern is, I think we're going to find as we quilt all these out, there's going to be slight differences between the blocks, but I don't think there's going to be grand differences between the blocks. So, because I feel like this one looks a lot like, oh, is it block number 1? I think it's block number 1. And I went to Fat Quarter Shop's website to print out a picture of this kind of blown up so I could put it on my little design board that I keep in front of the camera, and they don't have design number 3 for sale yet, so I don't have a photo of it. And so I'm going to have to take it off my design board here in a little bit, just not to confuse us. Okay, so now I've got all those set open, and we are on to the next part. Okay, so now I'm just going to use this design board and I'm going to lay out the blocks that we are about to sew together. So I've got my one design board with all the letters on it, and they keep shifting around on me, but that's the nature of it. All right, so we're going to start with P. So P is going to be this one, and we're going to have that in our upper corner. Then we're going to have N. Oh, that can't be right. What's going on here? So P and N. Yay. All right, so I guess I cut one of those pieces a little bit large. Hopefully that was my only mistake. I'd rather it be a tiny bit too big than too small. Okay, so we've got P. And then we put our two ends flanking it. And then we're going to take our half square triangles, and they're going to go this way. So when I rotate this, these are going to be going the right way. I think I'm going to turn that to match them, if that makes sense. So they're not all going to go the right way, but that'll be okay. Oh, they're going to go all different directions. Okay, so now we've got those. I've got my one extra. I'm going to go put it in my pile of extras from this Pieceful Basket quilt block. Hopefully we can do something fun with that at the very end. Okay, so next we're going to have H, which is going to go here. And then we'll have G, which is going to go here. And then we'll have K, which is going to go at the bottom. Okay, so now I'm going to orient this straight on. So I'm going to take this row and sew these three together. Then I'm going to sew these three together. Then I'm going to sew those two together. Then I'm going to press everything open, and I'll come set it back on the design board, make sure it's all the right direction, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, so we've got our whole block set up on the design board. That really does help me keep my sanity, and I'm going to sew this top row together, then this row, and then that one will be left alone. We'll press them and then put them back on this design board and make sure they look exactly like this. Adjust your stitch length back up. I always do that. I'm just going to flip it open and then grab that far right hand piece exactly like it was on my board, and then set it on top. Piece 1 and 2 of the second row, set it on top. Open it up, get piece 3 from that second row, exactly like it was, flip it on top. And then my third row, I've only got these 2 pieces, so I'm going to flip it over. Okay, let's head over and press. Okay, and since this isn't totally even pieces, you know, if you were having a 9 patch, for instance, where you would have 3 in each row and they would line up exactly, I wouldn't probably pull them apart yet, but those are going to be kind of weird to press. So I'm just going to set my seam, press it open, flip it over, and press it all the way open. And put a clapper on it. And we'll do the next row. So this one has 2 seams. Set both of those. Press one direction first. I'm going to press towards the middle because that always seems to be the harder one to fold down. And then I'll press those open. Make sure if your iron's really hot, give it a second before you stick your hand back in there. Like mine. I did starch all this fabric, so I am using steam now. You can hear it's finally kicked on, and do be careful if you've got a lot of steam coming out of your iron because it can get you. Okay, and then we'll set these seams, press them towards the more difficult side, and then, whoopsie, and then press them open. Come on. Okay, so we'll put a clapper on that for just a second. And I'll go ahead and get these back on our original design board while that sits. So this was the lowest row with just our 2, and get these 2 up. Okay. So then we have that one, and that's not right. What's going on here? No, that one is the top. See, this is why I use the design board, because I can confuse myself in almost anything. Okay, so I'm going to double look at my picture, make sure that I've got it. Let me orient this so that it's easier, so that I've got all of my 1, 2, 3 blues on top, blues in the top corner, and my plaids, and then my lighter blue down here at the bottom. So that all looks good. So now I'm going to take it back to this sewing machine, and I'm just going to join all of these rows, and then I'm going to press it. Okay, guys, I'm so sorry. I sewed one row without you. I thought I hit record. I'm over here prattling on, and it turns out I never hit record. My neighbors are absolutely right. I was in here in my sewing room being the crazy lady talking to myself. So at least when I'm talking to you guys, I don't look so nuts. Okay, so what I did was I just folded this row down onto this row and then sewed them together. And now I'm going to do the same thing but from this side. Now, you know me, I'm not typically a pinner, but I was really excited to use these new pins that came in our kit this month. So I'm going to pin these. And it's probably not a bad thing to pin these because they are pretty contrasty colors and it'll be easier to keep all of those joins very aligned. Now, I was starting to say to myself, it turns out, that I typically end up using these magnetic pin holders. I'm wondering if anybody else out there has a pin solution that they really love, because I think that these little tins are so cute, but they just functionally for me, I can't get in and out of there as quickly as I can if I'm using something that's magnetic where the pin just sticks, or even a old-fashioned pin cushion. I say old-fashioned, a standard pin cushion that just has the filling. I've got one of these thread catchers on the edge of my desk here that I use because I've got a couple Tula pink pins that came in a sew sampler forever ago, and they're not magnetic. So this cushion that holds it onto the top of my table actually works really nicely for a pin cushion as well, as I drop it all on the floor. Of course. All right, so I've got that pinned on now. That's my row 3. I'm going to just sew that on. Now remember, after you finish your paper piecing, you want to put your stitch length back to a standard length. I usually notice that after about the 5th stitch. All right, and off we go. Okay, and I'll pull that back to my design board. I almost always am going to come back to this design board to make sure that I have everything lined up in the right spot that I want it. In fact, I made this design board specifically because I didn't have any large enough to cover it. And there's a tutorial on my YouTube site. In fact, I can link it in the description for you guys if you want a tutorial on how to do that. They're also available for sale. I don't know if they're this large, but I think on Fat Quarter Shop's website, there's one that Lori Holt makes that is in a couple different sizes. I just always end up needing more, and I always have leftover binding, and so I figure it's 2 birds, 1 stone. I get rid of some of my extra batting, I get rid of some of my extra binding, I get to make it in the color wheel that I want, and everybody's happy. And I save a little bit of money. Okay, so I'm going to sew this last row on, and then we will go over and press it. And this one's coming together really quickly. I am going to try to mostly give you guys real-time videos on some of these single blocks, just so you kind of know what to expect. But if it looks like it's something that we're doing over and over again in repetition, that's when I like to fast forward it and just save you the pain of watching paint dry. Okay, so first I'm going to press this inner seam, and I'm going to press this one. And then I'm going to press them both to one side and come back and press them open. So I'm curious, have a lot of you guys sewn these types of basket blocks before? Is this something you kind of have a lot of experience with, a tiny bit of experience with, something you've never tried before? I really love these sew samplers because they do encourage me to get out of my own head and out of my own, lane and try some new things. Definitely some fabrics that I wouldn't have chosen, and some patterns too. The earlier one, oh gosh, what was it called? Hat Dashery by Lori Holt, or it was Lori Holt's Mercantile Fabric with the Hat Dashery. I had so much fun with that quilt. In fact, I'd really love to sew it out in a bunch of plaid flannels. Like, I almost has like a Paddington Bear kind of feel, like in darker plaid flannels with red as the flowers. Sorry, I'll insert a picture here for those of you who don't know what quilt I'm talking about. Okay, so we are all pressed open. Okay, so we are all pressed open and ready for our next step. So first thing we're going to do is find piece J, which is very similar to K, so be sure and make sure we don't get those confused. So now we're going to sew our J strip on the outside edge and press that open. And just because I want to use my little house pins, I don't know, I think they're so cute. I wouldn't have said that I thought the Fat Quarter Shop's colors were baby pink and baby blue. Maybe that's because the Sew Sampler always comes in that teal box, unless it's a special edition. But it very much is suiting for theirs to be that color. I pinned that too high. See, this is why we pin, so we know exactly what we have. And there are some incredibly precision quilters out there. And honestly, guys, that is just not me. I'm going to cut as accurately as I can. I'm going to trim at my blocks. I'm going to take the steps, use the papers, all of that good stuff. But at the end of the day, I can make it work. So as long as I can make it work, I'm going to be happy with it. And I think it saves me some sanity. Okay, let's go press it. Okay, so we'll set our seam. I always like to kind of keep coming over these other ones. I don't know, does anybody else do that? Maybe it's just me. I feel like it gets a little bit flatter every time I do it. So I'm going to set that seam. And I am not going to worry about pressing that one open. And I'm going to set my block on it. Okay, and while I'm waiting for that to finish up under the clappers, I'm going to go ahead and build out our next section. So we're going to take B and I. All right, so we've got our B and I pieces. So you could draw a line from corner to corner. If you're a beginner, I recommend that. In fact, let's just do that so everybody can see what that looks like. So you're going to take your, any ruler will work, and this is called a quilters ruler, and I can just line it up down the middle, and it's going to give me kind of a 1/2 inch gap so that I'm doing a line a 1/4 inch from center. Sorry, it was rocking up there. And my friction pin is dying. I need to order some more. So my kids love to use these for math. They really don't like to write with pencils, so I try to get them to at least write in something that's erasable. Okay, so you've got your 2 lines. If you didn't have this ruler, then you would just take a regular ruler, and I'm going to get super close for you guys. You would take a regular ruler and you would draw a line right corner to corner, and then move over a 1/4 inch to hit that line, and then flip it around and get on your center line that you had already drawn and move over a 1/4 inch so that you're getting a 1/2 inch gap splitting that corner. So now we're going to put these right sides together. And we're going to just sew down both of those lines. And then we will go press and cut, and I will show you how all that works. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move this out of our way because we're all seams set there. I'm going to take my iron. I just like to set the seams before I cut it apart. I don't know if anybody else likes to do that, but I feel like things shift less if I do that. Okay, so then I'm going to cut right between it. Again, this is the same thing as our triangle paper that we use. That seam between the two is not going to be the most important part. And then I'm going to take these two and press towards the dark. Press towards the dark or the light. I'm doing whatever I want here. And these guys are really little, so I'm probably going to go ahead and trim off my corners and then press them open, because I don't want, since they're such a tiny piece, I feel like they get more bulky and they don't get more distorted, but I guess it's more important that they're not at all distorted. Okay, so those 4 are cut. Ah, scissors are stuck on my fingers. Okay. Sorry, my steam is going crazy. All right, steam this open. And then I'm going to let that sit for a second, drop a clapper on it. And then we want these to be 1.5 inches. So I'm going to just double check and make sure that that's what I have. I love this little fig tree ruler or mat. I don't even remember. This came in a subscription box a couple months ago. And I really was like, oh, that's tiny. I'm never going to use it. I use this stinking thing all the time. Mainly when I'm filming, but all the time. Okay, so yeah, this guy's going to need just a little tiny, tiny haircut. And if anything, I always do try to err on a little bit larger so that I can trim down this tiniest amount so that if I get out of square, I've got plenty of room. And that's why I usually end up sewing with a scant 1/4 inch, because it just gives me like the tiniest bit of wiggle room. Okay, so now we can do the next piece of our assembly. I'll meet you back at the big table. Okay, so now we're going to get ready for our next step here. So I've got my main body piece in here, and I'm going to start trying to set it up this way just to keep us from getting confused, but I'll do that at the end once the pattern starts to rotate it, because right now if you look at the pattern in the book, it's all oriented this way. So now we're going to take one of these pieces that we just made. We're going to put the blue corner to the outside. Then the next thing that we're going to do is get a piece L, which is this blue little paisley in a square. And then we're going to get a piece D. Piece D is very similar to piece C. So piece D, I'm going to double check because my alphabet slid around. Make sure that you have the right piece, and that's the right piece. So I'm going to sew this row together. And then it's going to get sewn onto here. And then we're going to make this row next, okay? So first we'll just sew these 3 together and press them. I'm going to pick them up kind of in order like that. If that's too confusing, then stay with the method we've been using on the design board. So I've got I didn't rotate anything, I didn't change anything. And then I'm going to just open it up and sew it on. And then that way it kind of saves me one trip to the pressing station. So that's one. We're going to sew that top row on first, and then next we're going to do this left-hand row. So if you wanted to, you could go ahead and piece together that left-hand row and even this next outside border, but I'm just going to keep this kind of one at a time steps. That way, if somebody's a beginner, it's really easy to follow along. So I'm going to press that in the same fashion that we've been pressing, and I will be right back. Okay, so now that that row is pressed, I'm just going to line it up across the top, and then I'm going to sew it on. The one seam that kind of needs to match is going to be right here. So that's where I'm going to flip it over. That's where I'm going to make sure that it is nested or pin it or both. And you can even flip it over so that you're sewing from here this way. Sometimes I like to do that if there's only one side that's super important. All right. In fact, let's do that this time. Okay. And then I'll fiddle with the end when we get to the end. So when I press this one, I will just go ahead and put this on my board for right now. I'm going to build out this one, and then I'll press both of them at the same time. So again, for this corner, we're going to have our piece C. Remember, this piece is a little bit longer than that piece that went across the top. Then we're going to have our piece L, which is just the square. And then we're going to have this half square triangle that we just made with the color portion facing the main body of our block. So now I'm going to just sew those three together, and then we'll press this one and press this one at the same time. So again, I just picked those three pieces up in order, didn't rotate anything so that it's easy to keep it all straight. Pull it back over here, open it up. And that way I know I'm sewing that blue block right there in the middle. Okay, so let's go press those two things. Okay, so now we've got our two sections. We're going to kind of press it once. Set the seam. Set the seam. And then I'm going to start on this end with the half square triangle, and I'm just going to press away from that. And that's all I'm going to do for that. Okay, so this one, we're just going to set that seam and then press it away from the main body of our block. And I'll throw a block on that for just a minute, or a clapper rather. Okay, so that's all pressed and ready to go. So again, we've got it, sorry, I don't want to change the orientation and get everybody confused. So that's the way we've had it oriented, and then we're going to put this one on this way. So both of your blues should be facing this main body of blue, okay? And then you'll have this individual square next to it. So we're going to sew this row onto here. And I pressed this seam open so it is not nesting on this, this block. So I am going to pin this guy just to make sure it stays nice and aligned. And because I like these little pink pins. Okay. right, I will go press that and be right back. Okay, so that's pressed open. Now we're going to take piece K and piece E. Remember, K and J are very close, so make sure you get the right piece for that. And we're going to sew our E and K together, and then we're going to sew it. We're going to sew our E and K together, and then we're going to sew it onto here. Now sometimes if I don't want to get up for something really small, I've got this handy dandy little roller. I actually use it quite a lot if I'm appliquing, but I'm just going to finger press it and then use the roller. Now you do need to be on a hard surface like your table or your cutting mat. It's not going to work very well on like a wool mat. So now I'm going to just put it right back onto my mat, make sure that it's got the right placement. Now I'm going to sew this onto here. Now this seam is going to line up with this seam, so that's probably the only place that I'm going to pin it. And because of the direction we press these, I pressed this one towards the white, and on the back strip I pressed away from the half square triangle, and I just continued that across this run. Those two seams are nesting, so that's kind of nice. Before I got into all these fat quarter shop items, I really was a girl who just liked to nest seams. I really did not like to press open. I do it about half the time now, but kind of grudgingly. And I'm going to use this same seam roller because we're going to sew on our next piece across the top here. And so really just the end of this seam needs to be opened. And I'm going to open it towards that anyways. So this is just, probably wouldn't do this if I wasn't filming, but just in the effort of saving a little bit of time, I'll press that better when we get it in. But it really does quite a nice job for zero heat. Okay, so now we've got this. Let me orient it the right way so that nobody can get confused. So now we're going to take similar blocks. We're going to get J, which is this little bit longer piece of the blue. Okay, and we're going to get that same E piece, and it's going to go up here. So we're going to sew these two together and then sew it onto here. And because those nested so well, I'm going to press to the white on this one as well. Press, roller, you know what I mean. You got what I'm saying? Okay. So again, as we're laying this out, this seam is going to align here. So that's going to be the important one that I'm going to pin. And actually I did that one backwards. I'm going to press this one the other way. See? Little humble pie never hurt anybody, right? Okay, let's try that again. And every time I bring it back to my block to sew it on, I always double check, look at it, make sure the orientation is good, because there have been so many silly times that I have just thought I knew what I was doing, but I didn't. Or I was wrong. Okay. Okay, so let's sew that one on. I think I had that lined up. I think I'm going to sew this one from the other end too. I just don't like the way that's feeling. Okay. All right, let's go press it. Okay, so we've got the 2 seams that we want to press, because remember I did use the roller on the one. So I'm just going to give it a good kind of all the way around over here. Let that sit for a second. And then this is our new seam. So I'm going to set my seam. And then I'm just going to press to the outside. Okay, so that's the center part of our block, all completed and ready to go. I'm going to throw it up on our little design board here. And now we're going to work on the outer portion for just a minute. So first we're going to take our piece A, which we have 2. We're going to take this one piece of it, and we're going to take our piece F. We're going to put it, oh, there's a wrinkle in that. Good thing I'm over here, huh? Okay. So we're going to put it right sides together. And then we're going to sew from this corner to this corner. I'm going to let that cool off for a second because my friction pin is not going to work on it. Whoopsie. Okay. And this diagonal line is longer, so I'm going to need a bigger ruler. Sorry. Let me reach right in front of you guys. Okay. So we are not using the other side of this half square triangle in the pattern. Of course, we will use it for something, right? We can't just throw it away. So I love these creative grid rulers because you can line this line here up with the edge of your fabric, get right on the corner, and then pull it to the corner. So you can see if you're out of square, if anything's slipping and sliding, you kind of get a feel for it. Okay. So we're going to draw our line. One of these days I'm going to get a new pen. And you can absolutely use your seam guide on your sewing machine, but especially for beginners, I know when I'm helping my daughter sew, it just feels like it is so much easier to sew on a line than next to a line or imagining a line or using your presser foot. So if you've got the experience to skip that step, skip that step. But if you need a little guidance, I recommend doing it this way. Okay, so now we're going to sew down that line. Easy breezy lemon squeezy, as my kids like to say. And now we'll head back over to that cutting mat and press this open and cut it apart. Okay, so first I do like to set that seam. And then so that I can keep that cutting mat here, I'm just gonna, or that ironing board here, I'm just gonna use my mat. So on these creative grid rulers, this first line on this side is a 1/4 inch. And there's a 1/4 inch marker on the other side, but there's no dotted line for it like it has on this one. So you can line up that dotted line. Sorry, my mat's not covering underneath. I don't want to cut my ironing board. Okay. So you get your seam lined up with this 1/4 inch line. Not that it's the end of the world, but that'll give you a good 1/4 inch seam on the inside. So I'm going to put that in my scrap bin along with this other piece that we had left over from earlier. Okay, so now we're just going to press this open. And then we're going to cut this on the diagonal the other way. Okay, so we're going to cut this one corner to corner. So we're just going to line up on the corners and the whole entire length of the block. And you know me, I generally don't like to cut stuff on the bias unless I have to. Whoopsie. There we go. And then we're also going to do the same thing for the plain block that we didn't do anything to. Make sure I'm on my ironing board underneath there. I'm sure this happens to people at retreat all the time. You're used to the way you have things set up all the time, and you have to alter it because you're somewhere else, or I'm trying to show you guys different shots, and I end up with this Tetris of stuff stacked on top of itself. Okay, I digress. Okay, now I've got our center block again. I've gone ahead and rotated this because that's how it's showing up in the pattern now. And just in the spirit of keeping things simple, I want to kind of demonstrate it the way you'll see it there. So we're first going to add our white border pieces to the top. Well, we're not going to add them yet. We're just going to set them out there. Now we're going to add our 2 bottom pieces. So we've got this piece heading to the bottom here, and this piece on the bottom here. Now the next thing that we're going to do is pick 2 opposite sides, and we're going to sew those on. So I'm going to sew this one on and this one on, and then we'll go press it once. And as you're lining these up, if this is going to be like the first 2, yes, our corners are going to hang off just a little bit. So I just try to center it and then sew it on. And then I'm going to take this top corner that would be right here, center it. Okay, so we'll go press that open and be right back. Okay, so one thing I am going to do is, you see these little dog ears kind of hanging up. I'm going to go ahead and just snip those off like we did with our other blocks. Just so that seam doesn't get any bulkier than it already is going to be. Okay, so I'll pull my trusty design board out, make sure that I'm still all aligned, and then I'm going to sew these other 2 sides on. Now you're not going to have as much wiggle. Oh, my sewing machine just came unplugged. Okay, so we're not going to have as much wiggle room on this block as we did on the previous 2, and that's okay. You're still going to just center it, and off we go. Okay, let's go press it and see how our block comes out. Okay guys, so there we have it. That's number 3 of the Pieceful Basket quilt along. I thought this was a really fun one. It definitely kind of follows suits with the other ones that we've done. I hope you're enjoying sewing this along with me, and if you have any other tips and tricks, definitely let me know. I'd love to see how yours are turning out. Are you sewing with Shoreline? Or are you doing something completely different? Please do remember, we've got that private Facebook group, because I know you guys can't share pictures back onto the YouTube, but if you join the private Facebook group, then I can see what you're working on and see what's under your needle too. As usual, guys, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoy these videos, it certainly would help me out a ton if you would like and subscribe to my channel, and absolutely, I would love it if you would share it with any of your friends that are quilters as well. Until then, I will see you guys next time. Oh, and I totally forgot. Okay, I'll take this down and I'll put all of these up on the design wall together so you can see those different whites. So this, again, I made with a Bella Solid 97, and the other ones are all out of Camille Ross Kelly's white on white dot that came as part of the collection. So we'll see if I have to rebuild some of these blocks. Let me know what you think. Maybe I'll create a poll over in the community tab. Okay, guys, you tell me. So this is all three of them. Two of them have the white on white dot from Camille Ross Kelly. The other one does not. This is our newer one. It's definitely wider. I'll take some close-up pictures so you can really see the difference. But I guess it's going to depend on what the finishing is. If the finishing has some sashing in it that has some color, I think it's probably going to be just fine. And I just won't put these two blocks right next to each other. You know, if it was block 1, block 2, block 3, then it might be a little bit more obvious. But if I just kind of spread these two out on the quilt, I think it's going to look just fine. But I'm going to put it to the people, and I will put a poll over on the community tab, and you guys can tell me what you think.